have consequences. And for the first time, I get close to the activists' lives. And when I came back and I started editing the film, a lot of people would ask me, are you an activist or a filmmaker? Since the film is such a strong activism itself. And I would always say, no, I'm not an activist, I'm just a filmmaker, I'm an artist, I'm not an activist. I made the film not because I was an activist. But then when over and over again I saw the people in the film, some of them are still in prison, and I realized that the film maybe could help them to get out of jail or could improve their situation. And especially when the lawyer, as you saw in the updates, that she was arrested. And I remember the day of her arrest, I said to myself, I'm going to do anything I can, however I can, to help her get her freedom. And it was that moment I realized, hey, this kind of thinking is an activist thinking. And then I started thinking what it means to be an activist. And if it means that you witness something and you refuse to stay passive anymore and you want to take some active action, then yes, I am an activist. And filming is my way of doing the activism.
So really, Sparrow and lawyer Wang and Sparrow's daughter also inspired you to become an activist.
Yeah.
Their activism.
Yeah.
And it's contagious.
Yeah. Exactly, I would say so.
So Allison, I wanted to ask you, you're an amazing director of the film Ai Weiwei, Never Sorry. You also have a deep connection to China. You speak Mandarin. At what point did you become involved as an executive producer of this film, and why?
So the summer that Nanfu was by Hayen's side, we were our team for Never Sorry. It was 2013, and so the film had been out for a year, and we were monitoring her story super closely. I actually didn't realize that Ai Weiwei himself was like purchasing her belongings and helping her out at the side of the road, but that image of her by the side of the road was shared widely on social media, and we were following her case. Hayen came to a screening of Never Sorry in Geneva at the Human Rights Film Festival in March 2013, and that was the first time. If you watch Never Sorry, you can see her about 2 or 3 times in the film, including totally nude in the photo she took with a bunch of like Twitter fans of Ai Weiwei. And then when I met her in person, she speaks extemporaneously like she has, a full team of speechwriters. I mean, she's amazing, and she spoke on behalf of Ai Weiwei when he didn't have his passport in 2013. She came to Geneva, invited by FIDH. And so I felt like, I was inspired by her. I knew her, and I'd been following her case. And then Aviva Slesson, who's a professor of, was she a professor of yours? A professor at NYU, whose class I spoke at, I speak at every semester if I can. Here in New York, she said, I have a student who is, has a film, and she's from China, and you should meet her. And we met like for brunch or something. And I mean, she's amazing, but really I saw the very early cut, and I was just like, she was there when everything went down that I was watching from afar. And so it was just like whatever I could do.
I'm sure people ask you this. Are you an activist or are you an artist? Well, why can't we be both? And what's your answer to that when people ask you it?
I wanted to ask you that. Can I hear your answer first?
Sure. I think that filmmaking is the way that we human rights defenders defend human rights. Just like lawyers who are human rights lawyers use law as a tool to affect human rights, we're filmmakers, and we use art and the art of storytelling, the powerful art of storytelling, to affect change. So I always argue for us being equal and both. And when people say, well, what percentage are you of activists or what percentage are you of artists? I say 100% and 100%. But I'd love to hear your vision.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think that's kind of what Nanfu was saying too. And I mean, I think that, as was said earlier in the introduction by like Linda and Gloria, it's at this moment right now, I think we can all break down the barriers of whether we're talking about some human rights situation in a particular context and that is separate from us, at least as Americans. When Never Sorry came out, I had a lot of people come up to me, maybe not a lot, there were a lot of people who came up and said, thank you for making that movie because it made me feel really lucky and proud, you know, that I'm American, that I'm not in China. And I never accepted that as like the takeaway of the film. And much more, you know, gratifying was the reaction, which really would happen more often at, you know, Q&As or after a film where people would say, you know, thanks for this film. It reminds me so much of what we're facing here, and that could be Germany or the UK or the US, anywhere, and I think Nanfu has definitely experienced that with Hooligan Sparrow. And I think now, you know, the idea, I think things are only moving in a direction where we see the importance of documentation, because even in the face of documentary evidence, of video evidence of things happening, of written evidence of things happening, you know, reality can be totally denied. And that used to be like a funny thing about what might happen in China, you know, or what would happen in China, and that was like the source of a lot of humor, certainly with Ai Weiwei and his like art. I think with Yahayan too, I mean, people would like laugh at how absurd it would be to, you know, I mean, it never started literally to be hit and then be told, nobody hit you, you know, I mean, and that is, you know, we now all talk about gaslighting and stuff. I mean, that is what we're talking about and what we're seeing right now. So I think even more than ever, there's that merging of documentation and it being an activist, you know, move.
Right, which has great resonance here in the United States right now, too. Minky Warden, you are the Director of Global Initiatives at Human Rights Watch. Tell us how you're using this film and bring us up to date about what's happening with the human rights situation in China.
Sure, I'm delighted you came to me next because I wanted to say at the Human Rights Watch International Film Festival, we feel like Nanfu and Allison are family. It's the reason that the human rights story and content is why the film is selected, but it's also just a beautiful film. You get the beauty of Chinese people, the landscape, the beauty of the fight, and the thing that I return to again and again is actually the joy of the activists, because China is a grim and depressing place. It's in the worst crackdown in 25 years since the Tiananmen Square massacre. And it's very hard, it's very impenetrable. Nanfu and Allison, in their own ways, with two very different films, really captured Chinese people in all of their dimensions. The sort of the plainclothes police lurking outside your door, but also the love of a parent for her daughter, and the intense cruelty that a regime, a government, is going to make a choice to punish a child for her mother, or to punish the lawyer for upholding the Constitution. So I think the thing that I love both about Hooligan Sparrow, but also about Ai Weiwei, Never Sorry, is that you really see Chinese people as they are today. You connect with them in an emotional way. I think it's a great public service, but I also think it's a document. It really lawyer Wang Yu sadly cannot be with us tonight in the same way at all of those screenings that we did of Ai Weiwei, Never Sorry. Ai Weiwei was never there. And I think it's an incredible gift that you've given to the world, that we can hear Wang Yu's voice, the lawyer's voice, and we can see how dogged and her faith in the system that never wavered. And that's not a voice that we can hear anymore. So thank you.
Thank you. Is this film being used in China?
I'll let my great hope is that it will be pirated and shown all over the world.
It has been pirated. I have like Chinese friends who have told me that they saw the film, and I was like, "Where did you see it?" It's like, "It's pirated. I downloaded it from Pirate Bay." And I was like, "What? Where did you download it? Which version is it? How is it?" And they told me it's the POV version. Just in the director POV skin.
Well, and I know that Nanfu was also in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is technically part of China. It's a still-free part of China. But I think, the possibility, the great possibility that this film has a chance to win Best Documentary, and that it could continue sailing around the world and telling this important story. But I think it's probably already been seen by millions without any distribution rights.
I always tell fellow documentary filmmakers, give a really good master to the biggest and best bootlegger in the country, because you want them to have a great master, and they're a fantastic distribution system to get it into all of the marketplaces where you see these sheets of DVDs, because you want a human rights film to be pirated, right? It's an honor.
The film the Chinese government doesn't want you to see is a great tagline.
But what do you think the film can do in China once seen?
The reason it's it really is a document, and I think, Pamela, the value of justice and filmmaking, but this film is really about ordinary citizens claiming the right that they have under the Chinese Constitution, under international human rights law. And the evidence is there, the evidence of the thuggery, the evidence of the injustices. And it spread when you were watching it in real time in a viral way on the internet. This film has the possibility to spread it in a viral way around the world. And people will tell you the Chinese government doesn't care what you say about them, and it doesn't really care what your opinion is, but they spend a lot of money, an enormous amount of propaganda effort to tell the world a very different story. So this is one film that's really standing up against this massive army of propagandists. So the value of it is just incredible. And one thing that I would like to say is the Chinese government, it portrays itself as a just power. They project as powerful around the world, but this film shows them to be small and mean and brutal. So I think it really is an extremely important film. I'm delighted you all. I love seeing a full room for the film, but it has enormous potential inside and outside China to show the true face of the country.